We hear a lot about disruption these days, but how does a company actually turn a massive global challenge into its single biggest advantage? Today, we're going to dig into the story of Acutaas Chemicals. They didn't just survive the chaos of the supply chain crisis, they used it as fuel for some seriously explosive growth.
And really, this is the question at the heart of it all. Getting through a crisis is one thing, but using it as a launch pad? That's a whole different ballgame. So how do you do it? How do you take a huge worldwide problem and flip it into a catalyst for your own success? All right, let's get to know the company at the center of all this, Acutaas Chemicals. Now, these guys aren't your average chemical company. They work at what they call the apex of chemistry, which is a fancy way of saying they make the super specialized, incredibly pure stuff that's essential for the world's most important industries. We're talking life-saving medicines, the chips in our phones, the batteries in EVs, you name it. Okay, so to really get why their strategy was so brilliant, we first have to understand the massive problem that they, and well, the entire world, were staring down. It all boiled down to the global supply chain shock. The last few years really taught us all a hard lesson, didn't they? We saw just how fragile everything was. This massive over-reliance on one part of the world for critical materials, it created these huge vulnerabilities. For so many companies, it was a massive, massive wake-up call.
And this slide right here, wow, it just lays out how exposed Acutaas was. Take a look at that donut chart. Just a decade ago, that giant purple slice shows that over 70%, 70, of their essential raw materials came from China. That is a huge dependency. If anything disrupts that one source, your whole operation is basically toast.
But here's the thing. Acutaas didn't just sit back and hope for the best. They saw this vulnerability not just as a threat, but as a huge opportunity to completely rethink their strategy, and that's what led to their China Plus One play.
And just look at the scale of this transformation. It's incredible. On the left, you see the before, that massive 70% reliance on China. Now look at the right. They completely flipped the script. China's share drops all the way down to 21%, while they brought the lion's share, 70%, home, sourcing it domestically in India. This wasn't just some small adjustment. This was a fundamental re-engineering of their entire business.
So, the big question is, did this massive, kind of risky bet actually pay off? Well, let's get to the results. The numbers, as you're about to see, really do speak for themselves. Just take a look at these figures for a single year. Revenue shot up by over 40%. That's fantastic. But then you look at EBITDA, which is a great way to measure profitability, and it grew by a staggering 80.6%. That is the kind of explosive growth that tells you the strategy wasn't just about playing defense, it was about going on offense.
And you know what might be even more impressive than that growth? It's how they did it. They pulled off something most companies can only dream of: zero net debt. That means they managed all this growth and expansion without borrowing money. That puts them in an incredibly strong, stable financial position. Growing like crazy while getting financially stronger? That's the holy grail. And it wasn't just the folks on Wall Street who noticed. The industry itself sat up and took notice, too. They've been racking up awards for everything from their performance and resilience to their commitment to being environmentally responsible. It's one thing to say you're doing great, it's another thing when everyone else is saying it too. So this huge strategic shift didn't just save their skin, it totally unlocked their future. By building this new, super resilient foundation, Acutaas basically gave themselves a license to go pioneer the next generation of absolutely critical chemicals. So first up, semiconductors. Get this, they are now India's only manufacturer of some of these super complex photoresist chemicals, and the level of quality we're talking about here is just mind-boggling. They have to hit purity levels measured in parts per billion. It's an insane level of precision. And they're not just keeping it local, they're expanding into the heart of the chip-making world: Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan.
And their second big frontier is just as exciting: battery chemicals. Acutaas is the very first company in India, outside of China, to pioneer these global electrolyte additives. Think of these as the secret sauce that helps EV batteries last longer, perform better, and stay safe. And they're all in, with a brand new plant for this stuff scheduled to fire up in fiscal year 2026.
And listen, this isn't just some PowerPoint fantasy. What you're looking at right here are their actual state-of-the-art manufacturing facilities. These aren't just buildings. They're these incredibly advanced, controlled environments where the chemistry of tomorrow is literally being created today. It's the physical proof backing up their big ambitions. So let's pull all of this together. What's the real lesson here? What's the big takeaway from the Acutaas story? It really comes down to the power of making a proactive, strategic shift, even when everything feels uncertain. You don't even have to take my word for it. This quote, from their own annual report, says it all. Their strategy wasn't just a theory. It got battle-tested during the biggest global disruption any of us have ever seen. And while other companies were scrambling, their operation stayed stable. I mean, that's the ultimate proof right there. It worked.
And that brings us to this final thought. As we dive headfirst into this new era of tech and energy, we tend to focus on the shiny finished products, the AI chips, the new EVs. But this story really reminds us to ask a more fundamental question. Who is actually building the chemistry that makes all of that stuff possible? Well, after looking at their story, Acutaas Chemicals has made a pretty darn strong case that they're a huge part of the answer.